that, like, I will be that Eucharistic missionary. I will be that witness, because I can show people the Eucharist all day long, but the eyes are going to tell you it's just bread.
Yeah.
But if I can show you what it's doing to me through the way I live, then all of a sudden, some of the theology might actually have a little bit of weight.
Is it catechetic? I mean, I'd be interested, both of you guys. I mean, you're in theology, you've been in ministry. Is it a catechetical issue? Is the idea that people don't sort of know the doctrines and the teachings, and if we introduce them to the early church fathers and showed them the tradition, and it seems like a decent starting place, right? But is that what it is? Like we just put enough knowledge in front of them, and we give them the teaching, and we give them the... What is...
They have to know why they care about the knowledge, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you have to sell them on like why they should value it at all.
Yeah. What is
which
that?
I don't.
Yeah.
Which I don't think. I mean, here I'm going to sound like a theology nerd for a moment, which I guess I am. But St. Bonaventure makes this really fascinating distinction, which is interesting. So he's making a distinction between Christ going to the cross and Christ giving us the Eucharist. Okay. And he wants to separate what Jesus is doing in the redemption. There's a point to this, and the atonement from each other. But what he says is the cross is preeminently there for the forgiveness of sins. Right? That becomes necessary because man owes a debt to God that he can't pay. Mm-hmm. No man is innocent enough to pay the debt. Right? It's an infinite debt, so you need a God who becomes flesh. So he works out the kind of classic promise of God has to become man to die on a cross, so that our sins can get forgiven. But he's like, actually, that's not that. That's necessary. Like, we need to have that wrong righted. And I think, right, you're right. We live in a world of in the weight of sin. I'm sure, like in your encounter with youth, as a parent and in ministry, like, and our own faults, or you're talking about your own weakness, citing St. Paul, we feel sin. But I don't think that's often enough to convince people. Like, it's like, you're in sin and you want to come out of sin. That's like an okay gospel message, but I'm not yet convinced, because right now my sin feels pretty fun, or my sin feels comfortable, or familiar. Augustine has this great place in the Confessions where he talks about that as he's trying to become chaste, and he's trying to embrace celibacy, and he feels this pull towards this, right? That his common law wife has now left him with his son, right? And he's in this great tension, and he describes his sins as like whispering behind him, like, don't leave us. It's not going to be good without us. Okay. You're not going to like it without us, right? And he actually like personifies his sins, and he describes them as like trying to get him to turn his head back and not forget them. Like, no, you like us. We're familiar, right? And there's this sense that I don't know if like just turning away from sin is enough. So Bonaventure says something else that's interesting. He says, it's actually not the cross that's the deepest revelation to us of Jesus' love for us. That the deepest revelation of his love for us is in the Eucharist. The cross is about forgiving sins, but it's in the Eucharist that God desires union with us, that he desires communion with us, that he desires to remain with us. And so I think there's something about the Eucharist that we as people have this desire to be known and loved and united with someone and have communion with each other. And to get them to pull back from kind of what is necessary sometimes, a kind of transactional view of salvation, which did happen. Like, Jesus paid a debt, he shed his blood. We need that forgiveness. So no, there's something about God wanting to remain with you and claim you and be with you. That I think is...
They're obviously like...
They're of a piece. They're a single sacrifice, but he's pulling apart like them as kind of two different images that reveal different dimensions of the atonement, basically.
Yeah, and I think even to like bring it down to like a very practical level, like if you would have told me 14 years ago, before I met my wife, like, do you see that girl over there? And if she would have been a stranger, I'd been like, yeah. Like, do you think she's attractive? I'd been like, yeah. But then if you would have said like, you can't talk to any other girls now, I'd have been like, what? And if you would have been like, and you're gonna have to spend all your money on her, right? And she's gonna make your house pink. And I'd have been totally...
Your house is actually pink?
Parts. More than what I would have done.
There's a lot of girls in the house, though.
I know. But if you started laying out all the things I was going to have to do and what it was going to cost, I would have said, no, thank you. But when I actually got to meet her, all of a sudden it was like, I want to spend my money on her. Like I don't mind that my house is a little pink now. Like I don't like, and so it's funny because going back to your point, like, is it just about the theology? The theology is super important, and we got to get the catechetics right. But there also has to be an encounter moment where people can see with their own eyes what we have in the Eucharist. And sometimes that's by bringing them to Mass, and sometimes that's through good theology, but sometimes that's just going to be through the witness of the church, right? I have this ongoing theory that I'm still trying to work out in my head. And again, I have some teens and some preteens, and just being in the church, we have some of this too, but it's just a culture of celebrity these days.
Yeah.
And why is that? And growing up, I looked up to some role models in sports, and I knew who the movie stars were, but it seems like it's taken on a new level, and I could hypothesize why that could be. But if I try to baptize it and spiritualize it, and I think one of the reasons might be is that we have given ourselves over to celebrity because we have lost view of saints. And I don't just mean like the big saints, like St. Paul or St. Christopher or whoever, is on like a medal or buildings are named after, but just like the everyday person who is living a life that's like, you look different and I don't know why. Right. You're living strangely to me, but there's something attractive about it and I want what you have. I think we need to be a better job showing people the importance of the Eucharist through our witness and through our life. Yeah. And I know for me, that's something that's been really challenging and a personal call going forward, that like I will be that Eucharistic missionary, I will be that witness, because I can show people the Eucharist all day long, but the eyes are going to tell you it's just bread. Yeah. But if I can show you what it's doing to me through the way I live, then all of a sudden, some of the theology might actually have a little bit of weight.
Yeah. Right.